So for folks just joining us, this is Tiernan McElwain. I'm with Child and Family Partners, and this is our second session about the first module in the pyramid model for supportive environments this time. And the pyramid model, we're going to talk a little bit more about today. We've got a couple people joining us. We have Jen and Angelica from Cheyenne, and we have Erica from San Antonio, and myself. If we have others that join us along the way, we'll let you know. But thanks for listening and thanks for joining us, everybody. Some of these we covered in our previous discussion. Pardon me. The overview of the pyramid model, we will kind of hit that again really quick. We did talk a lot about building relationships with children last time. We might reference a little bit about building relationships with families, but I do think that's kind of worth its own separate session, and we'll probably put one together in the future. Classroom team relationships is also an important one. I think that could be broken out on its own. And the ones that we're going to be focused on today are creating engaging environments and ongoing monitoring and positive encouragement. And when we're talking about engaging environments, we're talking about everything from the curriculum, the interactions, the materials, the space. And we're going to talk about that in a little more detail today. As we talked about last time, the pyramid model is a multi-tiered model that starts at the base with an effective workforce and moves up to nurturing and positive relationships, which has to be the basis of our work with one another, with families, with children, and then we move up to quality supportive environments, which is where we're kind of focused on this particular session. The goal of the pyramid model is to promote children's success by creating an environment where every child feels good and design an environment that promotes child engagement. And, you know, Jen, you and I have talked about child engagement as being so important to, you know, managing the challenging behaviors that we see sometimes. And, you know, when you think of, you know, times in the past when you've kind of helped a kid stay focused on something, what's your trick? What's one of the tricks in your bag, so to speak, to kind of keep kids entertained and interested in what's happening?
Um, there's two things. I try to, if they seem to be getting frustrated or, they're kind of not paying attention, I try to refocus them by asking them questions, or stating what they're doing. Like, you seem angry or you seem upset. Can you tell me about it? And then I also really start asking deep questions, like that they have to kind of think and really engage. Like today, for example, I was building with blocks in one class, and it was, they were like, I built a house, and they're like, okay, I'm ready, I'm done. And it was, so we were talking about who would live in this house. What else could you add to this house? If you could build your favorite house, what would you, add to it? What would it look like? And so really just helping them come up with different ideas has been two of my tricks.
I love that. The first thing I noticed is that you're not trying to change how they feel. You're acknowledging how they feel and inviting them to talk about it, right?
Exactly. Because sometimes I feel they don't have the words to tell me what's going on.
Right.
And so when I kind of identify that, then either they can tell me I'm way off base, which has happened, or
Yeah, I'm
I
sure.
can't, then, or they can be like, yes. And like, then we can kind of move on from there, which helps them not to escalate.
Right. And the other thing that I hear you then saying is, I'm going to ask questions, deep questions, as you termed, and that actually triggers the imagination. And the imagination is a real kind of almost a portal to engagement for many of our kids in this age group. For many of us as humans, that's a portal to our better thinking skills, our rational thinking, our executive functioning. So when you're doing that and you're asking somebody to imagine or share something that they kind of are thinking about or what they would like to see happen, those are triggering that frontal lobe, which then encourages the ability to control impulses, engage in imaginary play, engage in more sophisticated play, be rational in their thoughts and processes. So those are fantastic. demonstrations you're talking about there. So, and this designing the environment that promotes child engagement will be a focus for today, and then focusing on teaching what to do, teaching expectations and routines, teaching skills that children can use in place of challenging behaviors. So here are some, based on what the pyramid model talks about it and what I talk about, because I added my own little 2 cents here. Key social emotional skills for children that they need as they enter school. And if you look at this list, and I'm sure you all are, this is no small feat. Erica, you had Alina just join kindergarten, and I'm thinking, okay, this is a lot, but I don't imagine that you as a parent, Erica, you had to sit down and think, well, I want Alina to have the ability to effectively communicate her emotions, but she absolutely does that well. So can you see how these things fit her as she was going into kindergarten, Erica?
I do, and you're correct. I didn't think about it like, oh, she's mad. Can she tell me that she's mad? Because she definitely can. So yeah, I definitely see it.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. I mean, we don't have to think about these things. They often happen without much effort. However, when we have children that have struggled to get their words understood, struggle to speak for themselves, struggle to feel like they have some autonomy and some power, these things start to get kind of disturbed. And the one thing that I added to this list, I'll admit, is that first one: look, listen, feel, and be calm. Stay calm. This is an important piece of every person's experience in any environment. If I can't look, listen, feel, and be calm, I'm not going to be able to think very clearly, learn very much, or develop many relationships. I've got to be safe first. So if you think about Maslow's hierarchy, for example, we need to feel that we're safe, we're stable, we're cared for, and we don't have to fight for our needs to be met. So you can see how, again, if I can't do that, then many of these other things aren't going to come along. So for me, that ability to look, listen, feel, and stay calm is kind of primary. When children don't have those skills, they often exhibit what we call challenging behaviors, and we have to focus on teaching the skill. So think about that. If I have a child who can't look, listen, feel, and stay calm, I have to teach not just the skill, but I have to teach the experience of it. And so, for example, Angelica, I bet you do this a lot in that younger age group with whom you're working, infant and toddler room, right? And there are times when they don't feel very comfortable in their own skin at that age. So you're in there trying to help them feel safe, feel calm, feel connected, so that they can regulate in the class, right?
Yes, and it's very, with my classroom, it's even different because it's a bilingual classroom. So
oh, wow, great.
Different languages going on there too at the same time. So they have to feel comfortable with both languages and both teachers. One teacher is bilingual and one teacher isn't. So even both teachers have to feel comfortable with each other, knowing one of them speaks it and one of them doesn't. Me being the bilingual one, I translate when I'm talking to the child in Spanish into English, so the teacher and the other kids hear both languages and know what's going on.
That's so exciting. I visited a similar kind of classroom up in Jackson, and it was a Head Start, not an early Head Start classroom like yours is, but there was a bilingual teacher who was fantastic, and they had an English speaking teacher who only spoke English, and she was fantastic. But they would lead different parts of the day. They would, there was a lot of difference in terms of even their cultural representation. So the bilingual teacher in the class was very she was very direct, and sometimes it felt like, gosh, she really can be direct with these kids and they really respond well to that. And I have a tendency to be more playful than direct. So for me, it was really eye-opening to see that. And it's kind of with her, she calls it, I'm the Latina mom. And that's how I teach my kids to stay connected to me. And she will not let them For example, if she said their name from across the room and they didn't acknowledge that she said it, she made sure that the next time she said it, they heard it, whether it was because she was in their ear or she was tapping them on the shoulder or whatever. It wasn't anything mean, but it was really, a high level of expectation, which I thought was awesome. So again, when we don't have these skills, we got to teach these skills, meaning everything from how to be comfortable in the class to how to talk about what you want, to how to talk about the feelings you're having. And here's the piece I want to focus on for the entirety of my work with in this presentation, as well as my work with people in general. I want to have a generosity of spirit. I want to say, what if I assumed that every child was doing their best? So I walked into a class today and the kids were all excited to see me, which is, I love that. It's, makes my day every time I go to a classroom and they're excited. And, some of the kids got a little too excited and they stood up and started walking around. They were supposed to be having snack. And I know the teacher was a little bit irritated that I was kind of interrupting and distracting them. And it's okay. I embrace her frustration and tried to support getting the kids back on track. And I also support the excitement that the children have because they're doing their best. So is the teacher. So am I. And I think that generosity of spirit is something I want to kind of keep in our minds as a theme as we move forward today. Let's talk about this. What behaviors push your buttons? And feel free to put it in chat, or I'll kind of go through our group here and just ask you individually. Jen, when you think of the behaviors that push your buttons, what comes to mind for you?
When kids hurt other kids, that kind of is one of mine that I get really frustrated on, or when they spit. Those are kind of my two that I'm pretty calm, but if those two things happen, then I have to really check myself.
I have to probably agree with those. Those are really tough. And especially those instances where, and I got to admit that this is my own perception, which is probably inaccurate and contradicts what I just said about generosity of spirit, but I have a hard time having a generosity of spirit when a child hurts another child and then seems gleeful about it. And I really do. I know intellectually that child's doing the best that they can. It's certainly not what I want to see, though. Angelica, what kinds of things are, and I would imagine I know it's a very different experience with our younger kids. Are there some things, though, that you find push your buttons?
Well, with these guys, they're learning themselves and the teachers right now. So it's really hard to have them push one button at a time for any certain reason. But I think one of my biggest thing is when you're trying to talk to them and they just start laughing at you. I know they don't realize they're doing it because they're just so excited and they think that you're just talking to them and playing with them, but you're trying to explain to them that they can't be getting their friends and they laugh at you, right? It's like, okay, I have to take a breath and try to get myself and to try to explain to them and get them to stop laughing without making them feel like they're doing something wrong.
Yeah, it's hard. And it was interesting. I read something today because I was reading about, we had a question about impulsivity and kind of distractibility at the developmental preschool where I was at in Laramie. And somebody was looking for some guidance on it. And I just pulled up some information and, I learned that we do tend to have pretty high expectations for when kids will demonstrate some self-control. And what the research says right now is that not until about 3 years old can a child really take to heart being told no and following that instruction. And that's a really hard one for kids to learn. And I know that we're even, like, I just wrote it into a plan for a child with whom I'm partnering, just to think, how can we get him to accept no for an answer, let alone be told that we don't want him to do a certain behavior or to control an impulse to do a certain behavior. In fact, one of the things that I've worked on with kids is developing some impulse control by having them wait for a particular word. And this is harder with some of actually it will work with some of your toddlers probably, Angelica, but you know how toddlers like to destroy stuff, right? It's like second nature to them. So I build towers and toddlers knock them over, but they can't knock them over until I say the magic word. And I'll make sure and kind of block them physically if I have to and playfully kind of get in their way. And then when I say go, they can knock it over. But I also teach them how to knock it over so it's safe. Like we're not going to swing a giant bat at the tower I just built. You're going to push it over, and I'm going to put hand over hand to show you how to push it over. And then we're going to have a big giggle and some tickles about how it falls over. So I make sure that the process is rewarding to them, but I also teach them how to engage in each step of the process, how to watch when I'm building, how to wait for the magic word, listen for the magic word, and then how to do the action that brings about the fun response. Erica, what kinds of things push your buttons?
Lately, it's just asking the same question over and over.
And expecting a different answer?
Exactly. Yes.
It's the definition of insanity, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So think about this. How do these behaviors make you feel? What is your response when these behaviors occur? And then how does this impact your relationship with the child and or their family? So for me, when I've got, like Jen mentioned, physical aggression is one of the harder ones for me. And that behavior, I got to be frank, makes me feel mad and scared. What is my response? Sometimes I will tend to be scary in response, and I don't think that's the right way for me to be. But I want to own the fact that sometimes I will go for the opportunity to be scary as opposed to being nurturing and saying, and giving that generosity of spirit to say that this child is doing their best. And they need something right now and they can't express their needs around what they need. Or they can't express what they need or want. So I'm going to help kind of try and narrate this for them. Does anybody want to just take a shot at, how this impacts our relationship with the child when we don't check our responses or aren't careful about how we respond to these situations?
One of the things is it scares them depending on their age group.
Yeah.
And with the little ones, if you're standing above them and telling them something that they're doing wrong and they're looking up at you, you look like a big giant, and it's scary. And they don't know how to feel about that.
Yeah, such a good point. And do I want this child to fear me? And what does that do to my relationship with this child? Are they going to be wanting to listen to me? Not very likely if they're scared of me. It's going to be hard to listen to me because we go back to the fact they can't look, listen, feel, and be calm in the class. I think we're going to skip this activity, but I am going to include it in an email to folks. What this does is it gives you an opportunity. Let's talk through some of our hot button issues. For an example, I like we already said, aggression, right? So if that's my hot button issue, what is the possible reframing instead of just thinking this child is mean and wants to hurt this other child? What is another way for me to look at that behavior? And the way that I tend to have to look at it is that this child wants something and they do not have the skills to request it appropriately. And in most cases, that really is what it boils down to. It doesn't mean the behavior is okay. Let's be clear about that. Never is aggression okay. But I do want to respond differently to a child that doesn't have the skill that they need, rather than the child that I think or have diagnosed as not having the will to be a nice person. So I think children are definitely tend to have the will to do things the right way if they're taught how. And I want to kind of approach these situations with that generosity of spirit. And I just want to confirm again, we're talking about those high quality supportive environments. Let's take a look at this. We talk about, and so this is engagement for every child. And I kind of put Jen on the spot at the very beginning talking about this and this idea of scaffolding. I think at some point we're going to have to do a training on this. And my vision for it is that we're going to send out a certain set of toys to everybody that signs up for the training, and then we're going to kind of go around, where folks are at on our Zoom call and say, what did you create with this toy, just to show exactly how scaffolding can work. And engagement for every kid. You look at these pictures. You've got children who are painting. You've got these beautifully organized centers with plates, and it looks like the plates that kids had done some artwork on, and now they're beautifully displayed there. You have a center that has things nicely organized and a space that's welcoming, but not just open. So it's a nice space. Let's look at some of the other ideas in this section. Once these elements are in place, our goal is to promote the engagement of every child. So we want to make sure that we have a way to get every child comfortable in the space and engaged with the materials and the activities in that space. So let's see. I'm going to pause this recording for a second because I got to look this up. All right, are you seeing the inventory of practices, Erica?
No, it's still the quality supportive environments.
All right, let me stop share. Are you seeing designing supportive environments now?
Yes, the checklist.
All right, great.
Mhm.
So let's look at this one. This in the inventory of practices last time we looked at these positive relationship, building positive relationships activities. This time we're on designing supportive environments. Think about these in terms of what you've seen in rooms that you've worked in or other places where you visited. Are there traffic patterns? Are there obstacles? Are there clearly defined boundaries of the centers? Are they arranged to allow for multiple children? Giving a variety of materials. Children can spend time evenly across centers. So that, the way that I think of that being possible is that every center has something in it that is kind of new and engaging. And we kind of, like we've talked about in other trainings, we have to make sure we rotate those things to help kids get a new experience and something novel from the play center and the materials provided. Then we have to talk about schedules and routines. We have to teach to the schedule. That's one of the big ones that I see our Head Starts doing and our child care facilities doing at the start of the school year, for example, where they're saying, this is how we wash our hands. This is how we sit at circle. This is how we have a snack together. This is how we have a conversation. And every one of those little things has to be taught. Those are skills. Those aren't just things that happen by chance, obviously. Smooth transitions, designing activities to promote engagement. So this is the one we're going to spend a little more time on tonight. So we look at ways to conduct large group activities. We vary the topics and activities in large group from day to day. And my recommendation when we vary activities is that we have some things that are familiar and some things that are new. One example of that, I had a teacher I just adored. She was amazing. And she would, at her circle time, always had some kind of mystery in it. And in fact, I think she had the mystery bag that she brought to circle time. And this was a preschool class, but I've also seen it done with toddlers, where kids can go up and grab something out of the mystery bag. Every child knows they're going to get a chance to be the center of attention. They're going to hear their name called in a positive way. They're going to be able to grab something that they can hold physically during the circle. And it's a surprise. Those are all pretty captivating elements of engagement. So what I like to think about when I'm thinking about designing activities that promote engagement are around those ideas. What is cognitively interesting to the kids? What is visually surprising? What is a challenge that is unexpected? And then this last section we'll look at just to give folks an idea, and I'm happy to send this out to folks who want to kind of look at their own work in these areas. I can send this to you or give you a link to it. But how do we give directions? Do we get a child's attention before giving direction? Are we giving children choices and options when appropriate? Are we acknowledging positive behaviors more than negative? And are we establishing and enforcing clear rules, limits, and expectations? And then this last part, I thought that was the last part. Yep, this is it. Using positive feedback, engaging in ongoing monitoring, positive attention. So we're finding a way to continually give feedback to children about the positive things that they're doing in the classroom and with their peers. Angelica, when you think about those things for your classroom with infants and toddlers, what do you think about the space and the supportive environment that your space conveys to the kids? What are your thoughts about what's your mindset when you're setting up a classroom for that age group?
One of my main concerns is placement of furniture, because I have to be able to see them, and it has to be short enough where I can see over them to see them,
Right.
because they're so little. I think right now my youngest one is 1, and the child is just this tiny little thing.
They're little and they're surprisingly fast, aren't they?
Yes, and smart.
Yeah.
They have just these personalities, but one of my main things, and right now I don't know if everybody's doing it in their classrooms, but I know mostly at our center we have one set of toys that we play with at one point in time. And as they're done with that, we pull out and put that away and pull out something different. So throughout the day, they get new toys, new books, new different objects out during the day. So that way it's being cleaned and stuff at the same time. Yet they're thinking this is all brand new stuff as it comes in, because we have enough stuff that it goes around through the whole entire week. And the following week, we have completely different stuff. So it's like a brand new day every hour or so with these guys, because they get something new. And also in our classroom right now, each kid has their own box for their, crayons, glues, markers, all that. And that's pretty cool to them too, because that's theirs. And with me, I have their names on them for the older ones and pictures of their faces for the younger ones, and they look for that. So you got to make it to where they can see and try to understand what's theirs, because they still believe everything's theirs.
Yeah,
but
that.
If they see that it's actually theirs by having their face on there and their name, it makes them happy. It belongs to me. I'm going to use it. Nobody else can. So that's what's going on in our classroom right now. So
I love these ideas. I mean, of course, first you're talking about safety by being able to visually see everybody in the class, keep track of what's happening, even though they're small, smart, and quick. And then, ways to kind of keep them entertained, keep them interested, keep them engaged, and the novelty of the toys that you probably, let me know if this is how you do it, Angelica, but I would imagine you're seeing, okay, they're getting a little tired of this batch. Let's get ready for our next group of toys, right?
Yeah, and that, and also if it goes with their age group, a lot of stuff likes to go to their mouth.
Yeah.
So you have to catch that right away. So, and put that away so it can be sanitized. And
yeah,
you just want to make sure that you're on it and make sure that they notice, and they do, because I have one that pays attention. Hey, they put that in their mouth, Miss Angie. And they'll go pick it up and put it in the box, and then they go wash their hands, because they know after they pick something up that their hands have to be washed.
You have taught those routines over and over, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
And it's working. That's fantastic. I love hearing about that. And it is true. Once everything has been mouthed, you got to move on to the next batch of toys. Good idea. So this is really very helpful things to consider. We're talking about physical design, even like the environmental cues that your classroom gives. I'm sure, Angie, it's like okay, this is the space where we do this activity, and this is the space where we have defined for when we're eating, and this is the space where we have defined for when we're doing something as a larger group or something. So and that kind of monitoring of what's happening with the toys and with the children, kind of gives you cues then and clues to what needs to happen next to kind of keep people engaged. Jen, I'm just curious. I know that you probably have thought through these classroom arrangement and design issues quite a bit. Is in your position, are you involved with supporting some of the folks in these types of considerations at your Head Start?
Yes, actually, as Angie was talking, I was just thinking about how she put so much thought, and we had multiple conversations about how she was going to arrange her room because she wanted to make sure it was such a safe environment, but also engaging and fun. So I love hearing how it's working now. But yeah, I've come into many classrooms and we've talked about the settings, and even like I've made suggestions because that large space piece, you don't necessarily really think about it until there's a set, you have two different centers, but nothing dividing them. And then you're like, I need to rethink this because, I'm not able to give them clearly defined boundaries and it's causing problems. And so just by something as simple as putting in a little divider makes a huge difference sometimes.
Yeah, it's so good to have somebody to bounce those ideas off of too. I know there's been times when I visited rooms and they've just talked about how they feel stuck with a certain element in the classroom or stuck with a certain way that the classroom is organized. And sometimes it takes some real, not just creativity, but also some real just nuts and bolts muscles to get things moved or taken apart, or because sometimes you've just got things that are really problematic in terms of the space that they take up. But I'm so glad to hear that you and Angie could kind of talk about ideas, and then you're also, like you said, reaping the benefits of having put so much thought into it. What do you folks see with this environment? What is this telling the children to do?
Run.
Yeah, I'm thinking run, spin.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
looking at somersaults.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, this says your stuff is not as important as the space where you move. And it prioritizes movement over other things. And that's clearly an issue that's going to be difficult for this classroom in this kind of organizational situation. What does this one say?
Personal space is important, and you have
What was that last part?
and you have your own individual spot.
Yeah. And you stop when you get to the door. There's space that's reserved for lining up that's separate from the computer space, for example. There is a waste basket here because we keep our place cleaned up and we put things in trash that need to go there. These are nicely defined spaces. So next we got to talk about helping all children be engaged. If we've got the right space, we've got the right materials, and as Angie pointed out so brilliantly, we're rotating those materials regularly to keep kids interested and engaged. How do we structure the environment for success? I love this idea of a greeting choice, whether it's a high five. We don't usually do kisses, but a handshake, high five, or a hug I've seen. And giving kids choices like this, it also helps them define and script what a greeting can look like. And it gives a kid power and choice over their own body too. And I've had some kids, if they cross their arms across their body, that's one sign that we give to say, I don't want to greet any kind of physical greeting. This is a great idea of being able to give choices. So we're going to have, would you like to have a story, puppets, flannel board, books on tape, glove play, instruments? And I love having this idea of choices, because then you can kind of gauge where the children are at, or manufacture some kind of momentum based on what they're needing, or what you're interpreting their need as well as what they're telling you they need. Like, can we do some instruments? And giving them those choices, and the power over their own space and their activities is a big deal at this age. I think, and in fact, that's something that I wanted to kind of hit on here, is that I'm interested in looking for ways to give children power, even as 3-year-olds, even as infants, even as toddlers, because they should have a certain amount of power over their bodies, over their environment, over their connections to others. So think about ways that you give power in your classroom, Angie. I bet that you give kids power by accepting when they might tell you no, or when they are saying they need something, you respond. And that gives them a sense of power, not in some kind of corrupted way. But you're giving them a sense that they have some control over their world, and they actually need that. Have you thought about that much, Angie, in your work with your kids?
In our classroom, I have these like 3 little stumps that they're allowed to sit on during reading time. One child gets to pick the book that we're going to read for the day. Another child gets to choose if she wants to sit on that stump or not. And since there's 3, they have to alternate times. But they get to choose if that's where they're going to sit, or where they're going to sit on the ground next to me. And they do pretty good alternating on the stumps.
Nice. So it's something special that folks will want to do, and some folks are assigned that as a role, it sounds like. Is that right?
Yeah.
So the person who chooses the book, for example, sits on the stump. Is that right?
No, the person that chooses the book gets to choose, gets to ask the kids who wants to sit on the stump.
Oh, I see. That's neat.
Yeah, they're the one in charge at that point in time of the reading, of where people are going to sit and stuff. And they go up and they tap them on the shoulder, and I'll tell them, he's asking you if you want to sit on the stump, and they'll tell me no, or yes, please. And we alternate it like that. Beautiful. They do pretty good.
I love how you're giving power to a child, but you're also helping others retain their power by saying yes or no. And I just think that's beautiful. I all too often, I think we get into a script about infants, toddlers, or preschoolers where we're thinking, I have the power and I have to wield it appropriately as a teacher or as an adult. When in fact, sometimes our best bet is to share that power in ways that helps children feel like they have some effect on their environment, and on their class, and on their friends, and on their teacher, because really they do. And if we give them the impression that they don't, they will likely try to find ways to experience some kind of cause-effect relationship with what's happening in their environment.
Great example. Just like in our art time, they have their boxes, and they have one for the teachers, but we don't use it that often. Like today, one of my children asked the teacher that was in there with me if she would color with him, and he wanted to give her one of her papers, so she got her own paper, and she let that child go and grab her the coloring box for the teachers so she can color with him on her own.
Yeah, I love it. And I really love that idea of their own boxes. I know that's been driven a bit by the coronavirus pandemic, but I think it also, I know for me, there are times when I get overly invested in kids sharing all the time, and I don't share all the time. I'm not very good at it, and I'm not in preschool. It's been a while. So expecting, a 1, 2, 3, 4-year-old to share more than I do, not fair. So I want to make sure that we give kids a chance to say, no, I don't want to share. And by having their own box and their own power over that box, that's a fantastic way to give kids some autonomy and some responsibility, even as toddlers. That's just really cool.
Yeah, I had an experience today where I was building letters of the child's first name, and I made an I for this little guy, and he took the Legos. And I was like, wait, I'm not done with them. And he's like, well, you said that eye is mine. So like he associated and he was able to tell me like, you made that eye, so now it's mine. And I had never even thought about it, but he had taken ownership of it. And so we were able to work it out rather than him just not sharing. And it
What
was
an interesting
interesting.
example. What was that at the
And
end,
I would
Jen?
have
I'm
never
sorry.
thought about that had that not happened today.
Yeah. That's really cool. And nice that you could, I mean, I imagine that moment where it's like you are feeling like there's like this is interrupted in some way. You had this kind of thing flowing and then making that shift to where the child was at. What was that like for you, Jen?
Well, we were all kind of working on sharing. And so that's where my thought went first was, oh, this kid one more time is taking the toy. And then when he was like, no, that you said that letter's mine. And I was like, oh, he wasn't trying to just decide he wasn't going to share. It was I had said it was his, he took ownership of it. And then he was like, okay, I'll play with these. And so it took me a second, but once I knew where he was going, it worked out. And we just grabbed some more Legos and made more letters.
Very
And
cool.
we were able to just move on. But I'm glad I took that second to find out what he was thinking rather than just assuming, oh, here we go again. I mean, I did think that initially, but I was able to move on with, like you said, thinking the best and asking him, what's going on here? And so that it was a crazy, unique situation. And I looking back, I think it was really cool to see what he was thinking.
Yeah. And so cool to hear. I think you said it really well, Jen. You start off with maybe like a certain assumption about how things are or what the intention is. But if you can give yourself a minute and not get too stuck in it, you can move past that. But with that, and you had that generosity of spirit, you assumed positive intent on his part and listened. That's how it happened. That's the only way it happens. I can't do it if I'm not listening. I can't do it if I'm not present. I can't do it if I'm not being somehow aware of my own emotional responses and my own assumptions at times. So, gosh, thanks for sharing that because that's illustrates that whole concept so well. Thanks. I love these environmental cues as well. This is, you see it all over in classrooms where we've got kids you put your picture up to get the next turn, or you've got your picture up because you're in that particular center, and it really helps organize our world. These kinds of task sequences are particularly important for children who are perhaps having a harder time following a certain sequence or sticking with our schedule. But I also want to say, I don't think we do this often enough. And I know for me, I want to do a better job of saying, okay, step one, this is what it looks like. Step two, this is what it looks like. Step three. And these are really helpful cues, these cards, even though they're kind of, cartoonish or just illustrations. But I love this idea that, and I would actually like to see, my preference would be, okay, step one, the picture and the word, like measure. Step two, draw. Step three, glue. Step four, whatever that is, staple. So you have the words that are associated with the pictures too. And I think this really illustrates then how kids go through this process. And when you have somebody that is struggling with it, you can say, remember, step one, measure. Step three, ... not a lot of glue. So you come up, and you can even come up with those fun sayings about each of these that kind of makes a little bit of a rhyme or a little bit of pentameter there, so that people can engage with it and really have some fun with understanding the steps and hearing them repeated. We're still going to have to repeat them though, right? Classroom arrangement, design and learning centers. We've talked about this. Clear boundaries. Angie talked about the visibility, making sure that visual prompts are there when centers aren't an option, thinking about the size and location of everything that's in the classroom, and the preparation of centers. That's what I want to hit on. The preparation of centers here is, by that I mean, you saw on an earlier picture where they had chairs, the plastic chairs in like a kitchen center, and they looked like they were inviting. I've seen times when we've had a block center that had a road laid out or had a little castle built, and it was ready for folks to come play with it. And it's not intended that that be some kind of sacred object. It's intended just to provoke some thought and provoke engagement. So I've heard Nikki Baldwin at the University of Wyoming talk about like these invitations. And I know that they use them frequently at the Early Childhood Center on campus there, where they're saying, okay, this is what's possible with this, or this is, here's an invitation that simply puts out a lot of materials and lets kids go with some ideas about how to engage with them. Could be a bunch of cork and toothpicks and cotton balls and glue, and just see where kids go with it. And then there could be somebody that's already built something with some of those things to give the kids some ideas of how they can work together. So I want to just think about that. Like, how does the center look? Is it appealing? Is it clear how things are organized and what's available to me? And are there potentially some indications about what could be done here?
I had one aide I was talking to last week, and she, with COVID, we've been really limited on what we're putting in the centers and how often like the children are in the centers.
Yeah.
And she said one thing she wanted to do was make a book of pictures, kind of like what you were talking about, so that the kids could flip through and be like, oh, I could make that, or how could I change that to do what, work for me? And I was like, that's brilliant, because then, like you said, it's giving them some ideas of where to go with it, but also open-ended.
Absolutely. That's a great idea. Yeah. I mean, think about the mental rotations that kids will have to do with that to try and make something similar, or even just an analysis of what was used to make it so that they can create something like it. Yeah. And it's hard because, you've got like Legos that puts out those inscrutable directions about how to build something. But if you can make something simple that kids can have pictures of, it could be a lot of fun for them to engage with that at a developmentally appropriate level. That'd be awesome. So we want to make sure we have meaningful and engaging learning centers, obviously relevant to children's needs and interests and lives, highly engaging and interesting, different materials. And Angie's already talked about that, making sure that I've got materials that are being rotated through on a regular basis, even on an hourly basis, or on a drool basis. When we have too much drool on the toys, we'll move on to the next set. And making it so that these can be really engaging and fun centers. And I think that's what Jen also said, was safe, engaging, and fun. And if that's our environment, we're heading in the right direction, right? Angie, I imagine you doing this, just standing in the center of the room and looking around to see, is there entry everywhere? Is each center inviting? Are there enough materials? Is there a place for entering and exiting? Are there shelves labeled? How are we going to rotate materials? Are the materials even interesting? Have you done some time? Have you spent some time like that? I bet you have.
I have, and I noticed which toys and materials they like to play with more. So I've made it to where there's limited amount of them out, but I have like 3 sets of it, so that way that certain one is always out, so it's always there in case they want it. So it's not just one set. I have 3 sets, but one's put, the other ones are put away, so that way when I put that one away that they were playing with and it's dirty, they have the next one to go to.
And what is that thing that they like so much right now?
My animals.
Okay, great. Yeah, this is a real simple exercise, but you can also, like, you look at the little picture here, there's space enough for the adult to join in the play. There's space enough for people to walk around the table there. Everybody can sit comfortably, except for the teacher. She's probably hurting her back a little bit. I've been through that. None of the rest of you have, right? But there's some neat different options for materials there. Looks like hats and a mirror, and I don't know what else is there, but it looks like a really nice little center for the kids.
My best part is I have a portable little blue chair that sits flat on the floor that has a back, and I could take it with me to each station and be able to sit with my kids in each station.
I'm surprised I haven't seen you rolling down the hall with that.
It doesn't have any wheels.
I thought it did. We got to get you wheels. That's awesome. Yeah, so look at these spaces. what do you think are the strengths of and the concerns with each of these? This first one up on the top left looks like it's already been rifled through, right? You got dolls in the paper bin and things kind of all over the place. I don't think that kids coming over here would be very organized in their thinking or organized in their play. But I imagine children in this second center, you know, there's even a word to copy there. There's alphabet to copy. The things are nicely organized. And I can imagine this being very inviting. Anybody else notice anything?
I just think in the top one, the kids might not even have a clue as to what to do. Like, is this the writing center or is this the house center?
Right.
Or, you know, I just think it's kind of disorganized. And so that would make, I think, like you said, it difficult. I've seen several of our teachers do the bottom corner when we were able to do like a specific writing center. And a lot of them look like that to give the children options of different materials and different words. And so, yeah, I like that one.
And I could see the one on the bottom quickly looking like the one on top after about 10 minutes of play. And then we go over and then we go over and we teach the routine. Okay, hey, we have some things out. Now let's think about where these things go and how we get organized so that we can keep ourselves organized and our work organized here. And it's going to happen. You know, I nobody should be beating themselves up about it or making kids feel bad about it. That's natural. But the skills that are necessary to put it back together aren't necessarily ones that they know right offhand. Yeah, giving choices and giving kids flexible ways to engage or position themselves in the environment. So this little girl has the option of sitting in a chair, but she was trying to roll out this, looks like Play-Doh. And in order to get a better angle, she needed to stand up. So we're giving kids different choices about how they position themselves and about how they engage with the materials. This is excellent. There's environmental cues with wiggle room. So look at the squares that are, or the rectangles that are, I know my shapes, come on. So we've got rectangles on the floor and we've got kids kind of standing near them. They don't have to be perfectly in them. Can you imagine the teacher that goes by and says, okay, Sean, stand in the middle of the rectangle while you're playing in the sensory bin. We need to be flexible, but know that these environmental cues give some parameters, but they don't give all the parameters. Even when I've got, you know, we say that center is limited to 3 children. Well, if I've got a teacher playing at that center and we have a 4th child that wants to join, maybe I make an exception because we ask the folks, what should we do? Can we make space for 4 here? And we can have them do some problem solving around that. So I like to think about ways we can be flexible by expecting appropriate engagement and discussion and even negotiation amongst the children in our classrooms. Oh, let's watch this video on a system for choosing centers. Oh, wait, I don't think I shared my sound, did I? Oops.
Okay, now he's out of there. Come on. Come on, Tati.
Okay, that's fine. 3, you need 4. You need 1 more. Count them for me.
Okay, Patrick wants to put
Excellent.
up
Where you going
chairs this
today?
afternoon. Very good. Jasmine, what do you want?
And what else? Come here, Todd. What else? And what else?
Count those. How many? Count them again.
You made up.
Go to the next one. Jasmine, 1 minute.
Yes, ma'am. Go wash your hands.
Just 1 minute,
Put
so
your
now
nose
it's
and
1
go
minute.
wash your hands.
Jasmine wants to put the lunch boxes. Okay, let's count.
I love it. Here she is outlining her entire approach to center time. I've got 4 different centers I'm going to go to. This is the order I'm going to go to them in. And I love also listening to teachers carry on 2 or 3 conversations simultaneously. Angie, you never have to do that, do you?
Not at all.
I bet you have 2 that are verbal, 2 that are nonverbal at all times.
It's really interesting is when you're having to do both languages at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
And it makes it really, sometimes the kids they cue on to different keywords in Spanish, the English speaking children, and the Spanish speaking child will cue to one of the English words. They're the same words, but they cue onto it in the different languages.
Wow.
So it's very interesting on how they repeat it back to you.
I bet it's fascinating. That's great. So the other thing I like about this is something we've talked about earlier, which is that in order to kind of imagine and plan, you have to engage your executive functioning skills. And this little girl obviously had the skill to count what she was putting down, to plan and envision where she was heading and why, so she could express. And this was her demonstrating her power as well. Here she is having the power to say, this is where I want to go. This is the order I want to go in. And I can also imagine there needing to be some flexibility about that. Okay, we had 5 people choose this center as the first one they want to go to. Maybe you could choose yours in a different order. What do you think? And you can even target those types of interventions for children that you know might benefit from it, whether they might need that type of reordering or they might be capable of it. And then, this ounce of prevention idea is really nice. How do you design centers to support the child who has difficulty with peers? How do you design them so that a child who functions at a lower developmental level it can engage? How do you design centers to support a child with challenging behavior? And so sometimes you're going to think, like on this first one, sometimes I'm going to think about who children are paired up with in their centers, and how I then position myself near the center or with someone near the center so that we can make sure we've got a close monitoring going on. To design the center specifically, we might want to make sure that it's very engaging for that child's particular interests. We had a child in one of the centers where I worked who loved spiders, and he had a hard time with his classmates. He had a hard time staying in class even. But when we put something related to spiders in each of our centers, he would engage with those materials pretty well. And he would be so interested in them, he wouldn't really have any difficulty with his peers. And he wasn't demonstrating the challenging behaviors of hitting someone or crying helplessly in the middle of the floor or leaving the classroom. For those children who function at lower developmental levels, we want to think about the sensory experience of the center as well. Are there soft elements? Are there harder elements? Is there a variety of sensory experiences there? And are there some sensory experiences that can be invoked through the play? So like with blocks are heavy and can feel kind of slippery or cold. And I want to think about maybe alternating that with something in the center that feels warm or soft. And so how do I make sure that those types of experiences are available so that some kids can experience sensory play, where some children might then also do, like the child with the spiders, he was doing some parallel play. He would play kind of next to his peers with those things. And then you have some materials in the center that allow children to do social and cooperative play, where they're going to work together to create something. And similar to the sensory experiences in a center, when it comes to routines and activities, we're also going to balance things out. Some active stuff, some quiet stuff, some small group, some large group, some teacher directed and some child directed. We also want to structure activities and routines in the class so that there is a clear beginning, middle, and end. And I think sometimes that is challenged by, I know we have a few kids over there at your place, Jen, who they don't want to see the end of outdoor time. And we have to think about some clear ways to structure it so they understand the beginning, the middle, and the end of those activities.
One thing you had said that struck me was giving them the opportunity to practice when they're not in that high emotional state so that they can be successful and they know what that feels like.
Yeah.
So, being able to, like, even if they ramped up and had a behavior, but then later when they're calm, saying, you know what, I think we should practice this. What do you think? And letting them be successful at that and saying, you couldn't do it this morning, but look at you now. You are able to come inside without any problems. Good job. And so that really helps them so that, even then the next day, like, remember we practiced this, you know how to do this. Can you lead the group and show everybody how it's done? And so, helping the kids be successful.
Yeah, it's so great when we can take that time to practice when it's not feeling like, oh, everything's on the line. When it's time to come in for lunch and we're struggling to have enough teachers everywhere we need to be, that's not the time when I can typically, slow down, even though I need to. And the children experience that stress and that frustration from us in a way that often dysregulates them. And I think one of the times I was there, I think my presence made it more difficult for some of the boys to come in because we had too much fun outside. And that's kind of a funny way to say it. It wasn't too much fun. It's just that was a big drop off from the kind of fun we were having to the kinds of expectations they felt they were going to face in the classroom. And your point is exactly right on, Jen. I mean, if we can take some time to say, well, let's practice this so we can make coming inside rewarding, safe, engaging, and fun. And what can we do when you come in to make it fun? All right, so let's practice it now. I'm going to say it's time to go in. You're going to run to the line. And if you run there fast enough, I have to give you tickles, or we have to do a high five, or the super duper high five. So kids get a chance to engage and they connect with us in that process of practicing things that they don't have the skills for. Some kids, we assume they have the skill because, okay, well, he came inside that one day. Well, that one day, being outside wasn't fun for him because it was too cold. So he can do it when he doesn't want to be outside, but he can't do it when he wants to be outside. So we also want to be careful about the assumptions we make about children's ability to generalize behavior across situations and across experiences. But yeah, thanks for that reminder, Jen, because if we can find just some calm time to practice some of the things that we're trying to teach, we're going to get through it a lot better. And the same goes with these schedules and these routines. We teach those to the kids prior to really having any kind of heightened expectations about them. This is how we wash our hands. Oh, wow, look at you figured out how to wash your hands by following the routine. And you followed the schedule here on the wall, and you're living up to these expectations. And the visual schedules, folks see this everywhere you go. This is a child turning over those things that they've completed for the day to look at what comes next and what's after that. And this is an important piece of helping kids stay calm and regulated in the class. And really it's that first piece of look, listen, feel, and be calm. And this is one of those things that really helps children do that. Let's look at this for change in routine. I feel bad because we're going a little bit over tonight.
Okay, have we arrived at school today? Yes. Have we done meet and greet? Yes. Have we done morning circle? No. We're going to do morning circle, we're going to do centers, and then what's this one? Clean up, and what's this? Rainy. Rainy. We're going to do a rainy fun time activity inside the classroom. And then this is a surprise because it's a rainy day. So we're going to do a surprise.
Look at that. What a great way to talk about a change in the schedule. This is a surprise. I have a child I visited at Head Start in Laramie, and she struggles with the change in schedule, but they also don't have a visual schedule where they can talk about those changes. So that's one of the things we're really talking about for that classroom is how do we develop something for this classroom so she knows the change in schedule and can visualize it in some way. And I love that idea of a surprise. Again, the using mystery with preschoolers, look at how excited those kids were to think that there was a surprise. I mean, to them, surprise equals gift. Keep that in mind. And here we have morning meeting mini schedule. I love this idea that we've got, these different ways that we're going to organize our class. These are the things we're going to do first, and then we're going to do small group. We don't have time for this today, putting into practice, but I am going to send this out to folks. If you want to engage with it and discuss this more, I'm happy to do that too. So simply email me back. We also don't have time for the partnering with families piece today. Let's see what else we have. Circle seats. And Angie mentioned already having children's pictures on their boxes so they know it's theirs, they know where it is. This is another example of knowing where your spot is because your picture's there. Let's look at this transition to centers and we'll call it good for tonight.
We're gonna get those sprayers out and spray, 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 spray art.
I did not.
If we can find paint, I'll go to Miss Jeannie's room.
I did long slide, the long one.
Well, we'll see. Okay, I gotta find it first. And in the computer, there's going to be Grandma and me on the computer.
And what about we had that yesterday?
Right, we gotta make it go all the way around. Fast, round and round and round it goes. And where it stops, nobody knows.
Three. Michaela.
What are you going to do today, Victoria?
Here we go. Round and around.
What will you do today? You want that. I want that. What would you like to do? Only use your finger to point.
You!
Me.
Don't take them off.
I'm going to
Discovery
be
table.
a super friend today.
What else?
And have snack.
And computer. And one more.
And I'm gonna be
Science center.
a super
Science
listener.
center. Good girl.
We're all done.
Give me 5. Nice job. Give me 5, Matthew. Give me 5, Darian.
What did you folks see there? That was just such a cool little clip, but so many things happened.
One thing I liked was that even though only one child was going to get to pick at that moment, all the kids were engaged, so they weren't just sitting there waiting until she went through every child. And so it was, we're going to play with the hula hoop and we're going to be engaged, and then we're going to let her talk, but then we know what's coming back to me.
Yeah, they understand the routine. It's obviously been taught a few times. They've played this a few times. I love the hula hoop idea, and I got to admit, I keep forgetting that this is even in here, but it gives also that kind of sensory feedback. Like you could see that one of the boys was just kind of holding on to it and kind of not really pulling on it aggressively, but just holding it, and could keep some tension on his body and in his hands to keep him somewhat engaged. So this is just a great practice to give kids something to do with their hands, to keep them engaged appropriately and safely with what's happening in the class. The high fives for everybody, just cool. That's how it should be. Everybody gets a chance to be part of saying we're winning at life right now. And that's wonderful. Using every child's name. And you could tell kind of by the background noise that they broke into a couple of groups to do that, which is great, because then what a brilliant idea. Break kids into the smaller groups, because then they get you won't have to take as long to transition, and everybody gets kind of a more intense, intimate encounter with their teacher. Really fun stuff. So I'm going to stop share there and just say thanks for folks for joining tonight. Again, we're going to have another one of these in 2 weeks from tonight. So that'll be, what's that, December 16th. We hope to see you folks then. Thanks again for coming.